Hello and welcome to GeekItUp podcast. I'm Matt and I'll be your host for this geeky podcast. We want to hear from you guys what you'd like to listen to on our shows. But until then, we thought we'd do our first celebrity interview. We're joined today by the wonderful Simon Fisher-Becker. Simon, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for asking me, Matt. It seems such a long time since we first met, and I'm very pleased to come on the show, and I'm looking forward to all the questions that you've gathered for me.
Now, for those who don't know, Simon appeared in the 6th series Doctor Who alongside Matt Smith as Dorium Maldovar. So, I've got to ask Simon, what was it like to work with the BBC team and Matt Smith?
Well, working with Matt and the BBC team on Doctor Who was fantastic. It was, but extremely terrifying at the same time. You have to appreciate I was a fan of Doctor Who, and suddenly I find I'm getting a part in Doctor Who. I'm working opposite Alex Kingston, I just didn't want to mess it up, so that was the fear factor, but it was also very, very exciting. And Matt Smith, utterly delightful, and I have to thank him a lot, really, because he helped put me at my ease.
And how did the casting process happen? We'd love to know how you landed the role.
The casting? Yes, I remember it was mid-December 2009, and Andy Pryor called Kim Barry, my agent, and it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I got the call to say that Kim had got me the casting for Doctor Who the following day at about 10 a.m. I was sent a script, which was effectively the scene with Dr. Song, and I learnt the lines. I turned up to find that there were 7 roly-polies altogether being considered. 3 others I know very well, so I knew the competition would be tough. I thought there may be a recall, but I was very lucky. I was the chosen one.
And what about the makeup? Was it a rather long process, or was it quite a quick one?
Well, makeup. Yes, I mean, I was very lucky. I'm not poor old Dan Starkey who has to sit in the chair for 4 hours. Overall, makeup and costume took about 2 hours because they only needed to shave my head and put some barrier cream on and then just slap this blue water-based body paint, really, over me, and then spray some disgusting fixing agent, which really tasted vile and didn't really work. But it was quick, compared to some people.
Now, you've reprised your role as Dorium in several fan films based on Doctor Who. So what's it like knowing that your character is loved by so many?
Well, as I say, the first I sensed that Dorium was going to be a very good image was when they started slapping the makeup on me, I could see in the mirror that Dorium was going to have a very good look, but I had no idea what the actual response would be.
So when you were originally cast as Dorium, did you know your character would become as popular as what he is today?
Do you know, it's quite extraordinary. I have to count myself very lucky indeed. I was very lucky that Stephen Moffat wrote a part for a large chap. I'm very lucky that I was actually chosen to play Dorium, and then extremely lucky that Dorium has caught the eye and the interest of the fans. So when I find so much of the actual dialogue from Doctor Who itself is used, and then being asked to sort of reprise Dorium in little fan projects, it is at times overwhelming. It can be difficult also. I'm very conscious to try and get things recorded in time for people. It's not always easy, but I try my best. And it's just well, it is a fantasy come true in many ways. That's all I can say. And I thank the fans very much indeed. I try and help as best I can, but you have to realise that it's not always possible.
And I've also seen that you've been in Harry Potter as the Fat Friar. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Well, Matt, this question really just highlights how lucky I've been, really, to be associated with Harry Potter at the time of making. We're talking about, 17 years ago. It was the project to be associated with. So, of course, I had the paparazzi chasing me up the street. Warner Brothers treated us very respectfully. I had my own car with my own designated driver called Warren, who came to the door and took me to the studios every day. And it was really exciting. But beforehand, I had to do a casting. And I have to admit, before I was offered Fry, I had no real interest in Harry Potter at the time. I don't know why. It didn't really grab my attention. But one day I was in a bookshop, and there was this sale, buy 3 for the price of 2. So I bought the 2 I wanted, and I was looking around to think, well, what can I get? What can my third book be? And I happened upon an empty shelf that only had 1 book on it, and the book was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So I thought, well, let's take this and see what's all the fuss about. And, of course, when I got home, I just put it on my shelf and forgot all about it. And then, of course, I got the call. And rather like with Doctor Who, the audition comes in at sort of between midday and 2 o'clock, and you're told you have to have some lines learnt by 10 o'clock the following morning. So I did panic a little. But fortunately for me, a friend of mine was a Harry Potter anorak, and she was able to point to me the pages that the Fat Friar first appears on. And so I was able to read from there a little. So when I went to the first audition, the first question was, have you read the book? And I was able to sidestep the question by saying, oh, I know exactly who the Fat Friar is. So that helped me in through tremendously. And there were about 20 of us that were seen, and then it was whittled down to about 13. So that was a second audition, and then it was whittled down to about 7. That was the third audition, and then it was down to the last 3. So by the fourth audition, I was getting a bit fed up. It's a thing us actors have. You wish that you could be cast immediately, but it didn't happen. But so when the call came to say I'd got the part, it was more, well, thank God for that, rather than yippee. And then we filmed a lot. We filmed an awful lot. We about 4.5 to 5 weeks. We did the Death Day party. All the ghosts did scenes with Peeves, the poltergeist. But when it came to it, none of it was used, which was very disappointed. But the Fat Friar does cling on at the sorting ceremony, and he's seen flying around in some other scenes. And so I sort of joke now that my name in the credits is on screen longer than I am. And I sort of tell that story to drama students now, just to let them know you may be offered a fantastic part in a TV or a movie, but you could always end up on the cutting room floor. So just learn your lines, turn up, be as professional as you can, take the money and enjoy it and spend it well when it arrives. But again, such fun.
And back to the Doctor Who fandom again. As you well know, Big Finish are known for bringing back well-loved characters. So, would you reprise your role as Dorium if you were asked, of course?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Big Finish are indeed very good at bringing characters back, but I have also let it be known to the powers that be that if they want Dorium to come back into the TV series, then I'd be more than delighted to return. But we have to wait and see. I've done a couple of Big Finish. I did an Iris Wildtime story called A Lift in Time, and also Gallifrey 5. I was the Minister of Science, Minister Cavall. So I've done that, but as Dorium, nothing yet. But you never know. You never know. As you say, Big Finish are constantly searching for the rights or to have a contract to bring a character back. I'm sure either through Big Finish or through some other means, Dorium will return because the fans love him, as well does my bank manager.
So, what's been your most fun project to do? And can you share any funny on-set memories from stuff you've previously worked on?
Fun projects. Oh, that's so difficult to say because I have to say, whatever project I'm working on, I really enjoy at the time. I know that sounds like a stock answer or a cop out, but it is very true, and I think a lot of actors will say the same. The excitement of working on something new, it really is very thrilling. But having said that, it's difficult to say. I started out on stage, so there were a lot of plays. I remember there was a play I did called Busybody, and the set was designed like a chessboard. And when we finished a scene, we didn't actually go off the stage as such, but we had our own designated seats on each side, stage right and stage left. And whilst delivering the lines for each scene, we had to do a ballroom dance of some sort. So I did a foxtrot, I did a tango, I did a waltz. But as you can imagine, that was a very, very long time ago. And that was really fun because I'd never done anything like it before. And that sort of highlights something as well. I always enjoy doing something that I've never done before. Also on the stage, of course, there's pantomime. I've played all sorts of characters in pantomime, but of course playing Dame or Ugly Sister is fun, mainly because we have really strong roles. But also part of the fun is with a Dame in particular, every time a Dame comes onto a new scene, she has to be seen in a new frock. And sometimes she finishes a song and there is only the time to get off with the sort of ending music of a song, and then you have to turn around and get into a new frock in time to get her back on, when there's the introduction bars of the next song. And it can be very awkward, but when you rehearse it properly with a proper professional team, it works like a ballet, and it's absolutely fantastic. Doctor Who, of course, was huge fun, huge fun. But there was another series I did recently called Puppy Love, which was for the BBC, where I played the husband to Joanna Scanlon, who ran a doggy training centre, hence it was called Puppy Love. So we got to work with lots of animals, lots of dogs, and we had to film a scene without the animals, and then film it again with the animals, with the instruction, whatever the dogs do, just go with it. So that was fun too. And as I say, Doctor Who was very exciting and very funny. But, you know, that's all I can say, really. Every project has its own bit of fun, but we have to work on it hard. That's all.
And we've now got time for some fan questions. So, Mark Dorsey asks, what was your favourite episode of Doctor Who to film and why?
Do you know, this is actually a very difficult question, but thank you for asking it, Mark. Mark Dorsey. Thank you so much, because every episode of Doctor Who had its elements of fun, but also scariness, and the setting that you were with and who you were working with made all the difference. So I will say, here we go. So Pandorica opens. We're working with Alex Kingston for the first time ever. All I could do when she was sitting opposite me is stop myself from putting my fingers through her hair. Her eyes were mesmerising, but it was also quite a joy just to watch how her process of learning lines and getting on with the job. It was very, very cramped where we were. We were down in the bowels of some wine bar in Cardiff, and it was a tiny, tiny space. So you can imagine, with all the cameras set up, the lighting, the sound, as well as additional characters who had to be sort of mill around. It was quite a challenge, but we did have good fun, and we got through it. So that's right. Now, when I was called back for A Good Man Goes to War, this, I will admit, is I think is the best episode of Series 6, because there was so much going on, and emotionally we were drawn through all the spectrum. You were either bursting out laughing, or you were very tense, or you were close to tears. It was an excellent episode, and it really introduced Dorium proper to become a bit of a hero in some people's eyes, but also it asked a lot of questions about Dorium. So that is a lovely episode to have worked on. And of course, the wedding of River Song, where the concept of Dorium just having his head in the box was hysterical. And of course, the real challenge for me was to work with the star of the show, Matt Smith, who by that time we'd become quite pally on set. We talked a lot about football, and he genuinely looked after me, or he made me feel that he was looking after me, which was so generous of him indeed. Of course, some of you may not have seen, there was a prequel to A Good Man Goes to War, which is on YouTube. So if you type in A Good Man Goes to War prequel, you will see it. And the story of that is that whilst filming A Good Man Goes to War, I was approached in the evening at about 5:30 and told that Stephen asked if you would be happy to do a trailer for this episode. Well, of course I'd be happy. So I said, okay, it'll be you and 3 other characters. Excellent, I said. And so when are we doing it? Will we have time to rehearse? She said, probably not, because we're planning on doing it tomorrow morning. And this was 5:30. She said, Stephen's still writing the script, and it'll be in your trailer when you finish tonight. And of course, I finished around 11 p.m. that night. And of course, I quickly saw the brown envelope. I pulled out the script. And of course, the 3 other characters were headless monks. So it turned out that I had a monologue to do. Well, if you go to YouTube and you watch the prequel, you can judge for yourself what it was like. But it was all very, very exciting. And I really can't say which was my favourite, because they were all my favourites for different reasons.
Charlie Dixon asks, what did you enjoy most about working on Les Mis?
Thank you, Charlie. This is a very good question indeed. Yes, Les Mis was a very funny situation for me. Kim, my agent, phoned me up and she said, well, this is a funny one. She said, the film Les Mis, they're looking for people who can't sing and can't dance. And Nina Gold, who's the casting director, has asked you in. I thought, cheeky. And because I have sung in musicals, but I'm not an opera singer, but I went along and I sung Master of the House as best I could, and then I was called in to go and do some movement classes, and that was that. And then I found I was called, and when I got to Pinewood Studios, I found that there was another friend of mine, Mark Donovan, who's another roly-poly, and we both sort of fell into the same character, that we were 2 large chaps who weren't really professional dancers, but could sing a little. But then, as for the rest of the cast, for the scenes that we were filming, they had all done Les Mis at some point in their career, and some were actually performing on the very evenings of the days that we were filming. So it was very curious. But again, it was another project that I was absolutely delighted to be associated with, because I would never, ever be asked to appear in any form in a stage production of Les Mis. And in practice, what happened was we sang our songs, and I was just in one of the ensemble with Thénardier, and we sang Master of the House, and we had little microphones put in our ears, and we could hear somebody bashing out the tune on some sort of honky-tonk piano, and we had to sort of sing it live. Very good, very good. Bit dusty, the atmosphere, so trying to breathe properly was difficult, which is ironic when you're asking people to sing. The lights, it could be quite hot at times. The seats were extremely uncomfortable, and the hours were long. But apart from that, it was utterly utterly delightful. And Sacha Baron Cohen played Thénardier, and the poor soul was quite poorly when he first came in, and so we found after the first week that we were offered a week off before we went back a third week. And of course, you know, when you're put on hold like that, you do get a payment. So with that extra money, I bought a new fridge.
Izzy Morley has asked, what's your opinion on Jodie Whittaker's casting as the Doctor?
Thank you, Izzy, for the question I sensed was going to come up this time round. Jodie Whittaker is a very good actor. I've seen her in many things, and she should be given her chance. I have to tell you, with my grey hair, I know that with every change of the Doctor, there has been a bit of a hoo-ha. No pun intended there. I remember when John Pertwee was cast as Doctor Who number 3. Before then, he was known as a very lightweight voice comedian who could do all sorts of strange character voices, and was utterly delightful in what he did on the radio. But the idea that he would then become the Doctor really upset a few people until they saw the first episode. And what John Pertwee produces as the Doctor is nothing compared to what he had done before. And he really just highlights that actors are actors, and if they're given the chance, they can do all sorts of amazing things. I mean, for those of you who know Hugh Laurie, for example, in the UK, he was known as the bumbling Prince George in Blackadder, and he often played very dippy-doppy, upper-class type characters. And then suddenly he was cast as House in America, and you couldn't get anything more contrasting than that. So I say good luck to Jodie Whittaker. It's about time that we had a female Doctor, and for those who do disagree with me, I just say open your eyes and just give the girl a chance. And I think we'll find by the end of her tenure, people will be crying that she's leaving. So good luck to Jodie, and to those who are going to stick their heads in the sand, bye-bye.
And now for one last question. Anthony Curvin asks, what's been your toughest role to play, and what moment have you found most challenging?
Well, Anthony, it's every sort of role has its own challenges. After all, Dorium, with just being a head in the box, the biggest challenge was once they put the box over my head, I realised I couldn't hear properly. I had no peripheral vision. And, of course, the realisation that I couldn't use my arms or the rest of my body to express myself. That's a real challenge. But there you go, it all happens. And also, the challenge in pantomime is being able to time your jokes whilst singing, whilst dancing, whilst changing frocks. Every role has its sort of challenge. But one of the biggest challenges I have to admit, for those of you who go to conventions regularly and those who found time to follow me when I was on a tour, I now have 3 one-man shows which are semi-autobiography. They're called My Dalek Has a Puncture, My Dalek Has Another Puncture, and Let Zygons Be Zygons. And I sort of tell my story as well as giving anecdotes about other challenges I've had to meet in life. And what I've found is that people actually listen, which was a big surprise. And after the shows, they come back and they talk to me because something I've said has resonated with something that's happened to them. And I have found that I've become an inspirational and motivational speaker. As a result, I've been asked to be patrons of various disability charities, and I'm asked to give talks here, there, and everywhere. And so what is tough about that is that I now feel that in some people's eyes I'm a role model, and so I must try and keep up being the person that they feel I am. And the only way I'm managing to do it is just to be myself. and I try to be as honest and true as I can. But you just don't want to let anyone down. And as I said earlier, when people ask me to record things for them, it's not always possible, and I must admit I get a bit concerned when I let them down, but just occasionally I have to, and I forgive them. On the other side of the coin, what is not a challenge as such is people's fan mail, and I ask them to keep it coming. I do get round to it eventually. If you have a stamped addressed envelope and with a stamp on it, please put the stamp on it, then I'm able to turn it around quite quickly. If there is no stamp, I have to go to a post office, and that's quite a distance from me now. So I tend to only go to a post office sort of once or twice a month. So that might delay your bit of fan mail being turned around. Well, I hope that's answered your question, Anthony, and thank you for asking it.
And that's all we've got time for today. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Matt, again for asking me. And for those of you who want to know more about me and what I'm up to, please go to my website, fisherbecker.info. And although also those who are looking for my books, which are sort of published versions of my stage show, thank you, Dan Grubb and Fantastic Books Publishing. Please, you can find paperback versions on Amazon, but if you want a hardback version, please go to Fantastic Books Publishing. And to let you know, the audio version of My Dalek Has a Puncture will be out in time for Christmas, and the second book, My Dalek Has a Puncture, and my third, Let Zygons Be Zygons, will be published in 2018. So thank you all very much, and thank you once again, Matt.